Don't waste your time on those junkyard losers. This country was built on genocide and slavery. We killed all the black guys that were here, and then we shipped in new black guys of our own. Killed all the black guys that were here. Killed all the black guys that were here.
Killed all the black guys that were here, and then we shipped in new black guys of our own.
And then we brought in Jesus like a bar of soap.
Aloha. Today is Columbus Day. The celebration of Christopher Columbus. And to cope with that mechanism, people are calling it Indigenous Peoples Day to kind of counteract that alchemy that's being used. Just like in place of a Confederate statue somewhere in, I don't remember which state, there was some buzz going around talking about that they wanted to put up a statue of Erykah Badu. This is all alchemy. This is all a response to, a reaction to, and I wanted to address this reason why I bring up racism and the alchemy of racism as it's inflicted on humanity on a day-to-day basis, side by side next to the alchemy that is heliocentrism. And just go, hopefully, kind of quickly into the depths of how this affects our experience as a whole. We don't really pay too much mind to it a lot of the times based upon the individual, a lot of the times because it's just too uncomfortable. It's too murky. People don't want to talk about it. People don't want to think about it. And that's on purpose. That's part of the conditioning program, is to act like it doesn't exist. It's kind of like the Stockholm syndrome, or to be more accurate, like what would happen to an abused child, a child who has been abused and is powerless and has nobody believes that child. There's nothing that child can do to heal his or herself. Because their entire security, their entire foundation has been ripped from their reality. So there needs to be some kind of mechanism that kicks into gear where they continue on with life. And these abuses continue, and they add up. And they just keep adding. It's like a lie. And every interaction will be a reflection of that abuse. So a lot of people in the flat earth community focus on the abuse of heliocentrism and being separated from your meaning and your purpose, being surrounded by all of these illusions, being surrounded by all of these lies. And I say consistently in every video, is that the only alchemy that's being used against the people? Because ultimately the heliocentric university program is based upon control, authority, locking you down into a state of mind that maintains complacency, desensitizing you, disempowering you, installing hopelessness and apathy and so on and so forth, passivity. That's the intent of this program. And it's not just based upon separating you from the earth, like the balances of nature. It's the reason, one of the main reasons why I have to rehash this, because the alchemy of racism is so thick. Like, it goes into your into your body. It goes into your very experience. This is why it's such a linchpin in the entire human experience, because like I've said in previous videos, you cannot change anybody else. The individual is the only person that can change themselves. So when you address racism, you're asking people to change themselves. And that's hard enough to even be open to that. So when something like racism is even mentioned, it's like a slap in the face. We've created these coping mechanisms like, that doesn't exist, and we're all one, and race is a mechanism used against the people, and we should just look the other way. It's like, no, you can't just act like these wounds are not there. You have to go into them, see what they've affected. Like heliocentrism. Look at the power grid that was created around heliocentrism. Created NASA. They created the illusion of satellites. They created the technology warshipping around satellites, and created an entire world based around the technology of heliocentrism, believing that you live in a universe that is, everlasting and is filled with emptiness. So you are filled with emptiness. Not only are you filled with emptiness and are alone in this universe, but you have no meaning and no purpose. So your very beginnings are empty. So you're empty on every level. So that's how an entire world was created around this program, and that's not the only tactic that was used to control the individuals. And in reference to racism, like the African proverb I just showed says, the tongue cannot claim to be ignorant of what the teeth are doing. So this is what's happening with racism today. It's the tongue claiming to be ignorant of what the teeth are doing. So you've seen in the Dove commercial that was just recently brought up, showing that young so-called black woman taking off her brown shirt to reveal a white woman beneath, as if, the dove is going to clean the dirty, dark skin off to you to reveal this clean and fresh and pure white woman underneath. This is not a new thing. This is not a mistake that just happened. And it's not to put any kind of thing on the individuals who actually put this out, because, there's a chain of command where at the top of the chain of command, they very much know exactly the response that's going to happen with something like this. But lower in the chain of command, people aren't going to think about this shit. People aren't going to know the history of like dark skin being considered as oil or ink or dirt and something wrong with you. They're not going to see that. And even if they do, they might feel a certain way about it, but they're going to do their job. This is the power of money that money has over individuals. And the people in the higher chain of command, they can just tell them and force them. It's like, look, if you don't produce this, if you don't put this out there, you're fired. You're done. So there's various layers of this control grid that we don't really pay attention to. And that kind of action is no different than like the very existence of Christopher Columbus Day, celebrating a genocidal maniac who massacred millions of people, who set the tidal wave of an entire of control of an entire continent of people, and then installed the not personally, but setting the foundation of installing this entire slave trade storyline, and then this whole racial dominance and white supremacy storyline. Even when I mention those words, I can already hear the comments in the comment section. And they're consistent. This is why I constantly mention this when it comes up, because if you ask me, it's equal to what is going on with the heliocentric deception. Because with the heliocentric deception, from my perspective, you're talking about control and authority. That's on the external space and the internal, but largely on the international scale. We are being locked down, convinced literally that your world is not what it seems to be. So this same thing goes with racism and the supremacy program. Your world is not what it seems to be when you are conditioned with these programs from very young ages. And if you're still having difficulty with this and you haven't heard me mention any of these in my previous videos, look into the doll experiment. I will link it in this description. This is where I'm coming from in reference to the mind control. This is where I'm coming from in reference to the programming that starts very young, at a very young age. And it's on par with heliocentrism because it has the same effect. We're talking about control. We're talking about mind control. We're talking about authority. We're talking about disempowerment. And still celebrating Christopher Columbus is a form of alchemy. It's very destructive. And to still have these ads being produced by Johnson & Johnson and Dove and all these very different, talking about like normal to darker skin, as if darker skin isn't normal and white skin is purity. This is not in the 60s. This is not from the 50s. This Dove shit that went down was like a couple of days ago. So for people who are still claiming that I'm, producing delusions of grandeur because of the racist agenda that's not out there according to certain people, take a look again. I'm not the one who made this Nivea ad and this Johnson & Johnson ad and this Dove ad. I didn't put that out there. And please believe that these individuals who did pay for that to go out there, knowing that this is all one corporate entity, they know exactly what they're doing. So that there's a civil war, a race war, and this whole thing trying to be triggered in order to maintain order. So if you fight yourselves, then they can come in as the teachers and control you, install the law, install the order over you. That's the design. When in actual fact, if you go into the perspective of realizing, what we're really talking about when we're mentioning these ads, like these blatantly out of line ads that are being produced out there, you would hold a child to a higher standard of memory, a higher standard of discipline. You would hold a child to a higher standard of discipline than people are holding the mainstream commercialization right now. As far as like remembering, like if a child forgot to not speak in such a manner, to not whatever in such a manner, then you would look at that child like, didn't I just tell you this the other day? How come this is not sinking in right now? What's going on right now with you? Why are you not remembering what I just told you the other day? And it's not like something was told to this system the other day. This system utilized these mind control tactics, these racial tactics for decades, if not centuries. They've used these tactics for centuries against people to have a particular effect. It's still being done today and 2 days ago. So like I said, if a child kept doing the same thing over and over and over again, you would think something's wrong. You would have to ask yourself, what's going on here? What's wrong with this child? Why isn't this child figuring out what's wrong with this? And then add in like the perspectives of like Donald Trump and so on and so forth. Like the shit that he's said. The fact that he's your so-called president, and then the fact that there is no voting system. You're not voting for your president. They're putting these individuals in there. Then think about the whole thing of your first black president in the last time. And then that whole mechanism. This is a design. People are being played on purpose. If you have a Christopher Columbus Day in the Americas and he's slaughtered, or is at the head of the slaughtering team of the original peoples here, you know that's for power, that's for control. And if you can't recognize that, if you can't acknowledge that, then you are the problem. If you have a problem with somebody mentioning white supremacy, white privilege, and everything else that springs from that, you are the problem. To take it a step even further, if you don't acknowledge and reference this information at a time when it's so crucial to reference and acknowledge this information and actually heal these wounds, then you are also the problem. Being neutral in these situations is just as bad as being the aggressor or the oppressor. Neutrality is taking the side of the oppressor, for whoever said that quote. That's what neutrality is. That's what silence is. It's complicity. You are being complicit in this system when you don't reference this information. And if you take it a step even further to go against the people who are referencing this information, not to say when you reference white privilege or white supremacy that there's a black supremacy and a brown supremacy and so on and so forth. No, to references to get rid of this program that shouldn't be existing in the first place. To acknowledge the fact that this was an alchemy that was invented in the first place. To acknowledge the fact that there is a definite trigger mechanism within the mainstream society today that is trying to have an effect on people. So there's many different ways and reasons why I reference this program. One of the reasons why is because it's a definite alchemy that has an effect, an invisible effect on the people. It affects your subconscious engagement. It affects your unconscious responses in reality, and it affects your conscious reality. in the aftermath in many different ways. Mostly for the negative. All for the negative. When you're talking specifically about this, the same thing like with heliocentrism. It's all for the negative. It's to create an emptiness, to create a separation. Does that sound familiar in reference to like heliocentrism? Emptiness, separation, authority, control. It's the same thing. It's just on a more human level. At least with heliocentrism, they're talking about the earth. I mean, you would have to go into yourself really to take it a step even further to see how that affects humanity on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's not that far of a step or a stretch, but people would still have to do that. In fact, in the so-called flat earth community, they don't even really, that's not even like part of the regular thing. It's like, oh yeah, and we are separated from our meaning and purpose. It's meant to separate us. It's like, first there's the science. It's like, yeah, it's not a globe, flat versus globe. Oh, and then, it's meant to control humanity. And then it's meant to control this and that, and maintain emptiness and so on and so forth. That's the problem I have with, one of the main problems I have with the so-called flat earth community. It's that, no, that is not the and then. That is the actual first chapter. It's the first stage of mind control. See, when you flip it, that's when you commercialize it. And that's only being sold that way because it's easy. It's easy. You can make a toy out of a flat earth map and the science of flat earth. You can make a t-shirt, a hat. You can do all kinds. It can be cool. It's trendy. It's a club. You're in a club now because you have something to rally around. But when you're coming from the perspective of healing yourself and realizing your emptiness and realizing the lack of meaning and purpose that comes from being locked into a synthetic universe, you're asking yourself to be in a club or in a community with yourself. You have work to do with yourself. And this is what everybody in the so-called flat earth community is doing every day. But it's not cool or trendy or hip to talk about that stuff. I mean, it's too touchy. It's too thin ice. You don't want to go into there because people are uncomfortable with that. And that's where I say your neutrality, your uncomfortable space in that perspective is actually more detrimental to this system than the people that are instigating these programs on television. Because you're setting up a foundation to take that cancer into the next program. Because you won't challenge yourself. You won't empower yourself to face that fear and step into that next world. You're just going to wait around in Scienceville for the world to be built around you. And then say, oh, well, what are we supposed to do? They're so powerful. We're so hopeless. I mean, what are we going to do? We're stuck. There's nothing we can do. And that's where I've come to that point a while back. Like in the beginning of researching this flat earth information, I came to that point and then had to ask myself, what am I going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to continue on expanding this storyline as far as you can go? Or are you going to just sit down and accept the scientific storyline and just keep it as basic as possible, which keeps the people in power, keeps the illusions alive? If you're talking about heliocentrism, you're talking about illusion. So is heliocentrism the only illusion? Of course not. Is it one of the biggest ones? I would agree with that. I would have to say yes. People jump on it. It is the biggest lie. Okay, whatever. The point is, what are you going to do with that information? You jump on that bandwagon all you want, but what are you going to do with that information? What are you going to do with that? It's nothing if you just talk about it. You're talking about another idol, another savior, another thing. It's nothing if you don't do anything about it. And on its own, it's vulnerable. It's empty. On its own, like I've been saying, flat versus globe, on its own, it's already dead. It's not powerful enough because the power comes from the individual. And if you externalize the power of the individual into a thing like flat earth, then you already lost. And the perspective I'm coming from, largely, as at the most general scale, we're talking about evil. The evil that exists to separate a child from their parents. To separate a child from their own body. From loving themselves. That's what all these racial commercials are, and these racist civil war, race war perspectives are. It's separating the individual from nature, from who and what they are. Separating the individual from their meaning and purpose on a universal scale. It's evil. It's the essence of evil. This is what I'm saying is this is where I'm coming from, why I mention this information so much. Celebrating Christopher Columbus Day while you dance on the blood and the bones of the people that were killed as a result of that individual and those acts is the ultimate evil. I don't give a shit how many smartphones you build, how many empires you build, how many sandcastles you build, how many cars you've come up with. It doesn't matter. It's all for naught. You can defend this so-called civilization into your grave. I will not take that position. I will not put my art down. I will not put my sword down as long as this so-called civilization continues to act like it will not be revealed for what it truly is. Neutrality is complicit. This is the ultimate evil. Thanksgiving, Christopher Columbus Day, go all the way into the alchemy of Christmas. Go into the alchemy of the 4th of July, so-called Independence Day. Now multiply that towards the White House being built on Native American burial grounds. Literally, look it up yourself. This is an actual spiritual war. If you can entertain the idea that we are at a physical war, it's just not active like in the Civil War time frame. Yeah, I mean, it is for people who are being killed on the streets. I mean, people being killed across the world as a result of the military-industrial complex and the systems that are designed to have people kill themselves and be slaughtered by the domestic terrorists, which are the police officers and certain police officers and the system itself. That's domestic terrorism. If you have entertained any of the ideas that there are at least one false flag, if there's one, maybe two, maybe three, out of all of them that have been out there, you are underneath the boot of domestic terrorism. And everything that's out there, your commercials, your food, your school system, your job, your entertainment, your social media, everything that's out there is designed to distract you from realizing that. Because once you realize that to the depths, this is that inner work that needs to be done. You won't have anything else to do but revolt. If you continue to just accept this world for what it is, and then claim to be a truther, claim to be woke and all this other bullshit, then you're just playing another illusion. You're lying to yourself. This is the ultimate evil. And that's pretty much the definition of like the New Age community. Evil is not concerned with truthers. Evil is not concerned with wishful thinkers or enlightened beings or awakened beings. In fact, it employs them. Evil employs these wishful thinkers. Because wishful thinking is a lack of action in many ways. I mean, you have to think about something before you actually take action. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that in the essence of that is your only action. Wishful thinking and happy thoughts is your action. That is actually employed by evil itself. Evil needs you to make those kinds of actions be your reality. This is why the New Age community and even tendencies within the Flat Earth community are so dangerous. Because if you pigeonhole yourself into one version of reality, you're not only vulnerable, but you're doing the work of the system who has already placed itself in a position to co-opt those mechanisms that you have claimed to be beneficial for you or part of your awakening or the enlightenment of whatever. You've jumped on board a pirate ship that's dressed in some kind of, to go with the theme of the day, the Nina, the Pinta, and Santa Maria that's supposedly discovering the new world. You've jumped on board those three ships thinking that you're discovering the new world. When what are you doing? What are you actually doing when you jump on board those Christopher Columbus ships? And you're going to the Americas. On accident, first of all. So, like, what's happening there? It's true evil. And people who are in these so-called communities are not dumb. They're not dumb. They're just happy. Happiness can be dangerous. Think of it. Think about it. I mean, and that's not to say happiness is dangerous. Happiness can be dangerous because it can go into ignorance. And ignorance is very much so dangerous. So this is a prime example is the mainstream. You're happy because you have a car. You're happy because you have a computer. You're happy because you have a phone. You're happy because of everything that they've given you. All of these doggy treats that Christopher Columbus has given you. You're happy. But is that for your happiness? Or is that for your obedience? Is that for your ignorance? Is that for your complicity? Is that for you to keep your damn mouth shut? This is what all these systems are based upon. It's about control and authority over you. See, this is the balance that a lot of the New Agers and even some kind of the people in other communities, Black conscious community, or most for example, to stay on the trend here, the Flat Earth community, don't really realize that the destroyer energy is needed. The destroyer energy, you cannot build any foundations on anything. You cannot heal yourself until you have first destroyed your illusions. Until you have ripped apart everything that has held you down. All of the density that keeps you locked in physically, mentally, and psychologically and spiritually. These layers of mind control, your body mind, your higher mind, and your spiritual mind. The so-called powers that be know this. They know of your relationships with this reality. You have to give, the only way that you're going to really have any kind of effect or any kind of, the only way you'll be any kind of a threat to this system is if you give the so-called powers that be the respect that they have earned with their intelligence. This is a very intelligent system. If you just think they're dumb, if you just think that they accidentally released some things, if they accidentally, did some Las Vegas thing, or they accidentally hooked Trump up with Alex Jones, all this stuff was on accident. If you think that's an accident, any of this stuff is an accident. And even if it is built up of some accident, if you think they can't just adjust fire, then you are severely mistaken. This is a very intelligent system that doesn't give one shit about you or your children. All of this stuff is designed to make it seem like that. And if you're walking into this new world, in this, once everything is understood to be flat, then, it's going to be wonderful. Everything's going to change. And you're living in a fairy tale. You're childish, and you're not paying the respects to this system. That's not to say, oh yeah, well this and that, they just worship this or give it, so too much power over you. No, I'm saying to acknowledge this enemy. Acknowledge this system. If you don't acknowledge the evil, if you remain ignorant to the evil, the depths of the evil that this system will go and has gone, you're playing checkers. You're playing a game. You ain't doing shit but convincing yourself that you are doing something. You're playing a video game, thinking you're a superhero. And that's what this system is putting itself up to be. Superman. Literally, Superman back in the day. His quote, I think it was something like, he's protecting or fighting for truth, justice, and the American way. Literally, that's what Superman represented and represents today. By them putting that individual out there, and then actually rebooting his whole character in Marvel today with the Justice League and that whole, they're bringing justice to the whole world. I mean, you can go so far into this. I'm not going to go deep into that, but literally the words that came out of Christopher Reeve's mouth back in 78 were truth, justice, and the American way. He's Superman. He's an alien. He's not an American alien. He's an alien. He's literally from another galaxy or another universe. And he's here talking about the American way. You know what kind of effect that has on children? On children who are not from the Americas or the United States of America. Like, this is that whole effect. This is that whole reality that is being lived by many of the people today. That was back in 78. Look how many years has passed. And how much that mind control, and then rebooting that. So this is how far this stuff goes. And this is why it hurts so much when you mention stuff like white supremacy and white privilege. Like, think of today was 78. And how racist everything was like 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You're getting into lynching and burning people and dragging people down the street. Less than a lifetime ago. This is the reality. These are the wounds that people are trying to ignore in order to walk into this supposedly new world. If you walk into a new world with 2 broken legs, 2 casts on your legs, and 10 cancers in your body, what do you think is going to happen? You're connected to chemotherapy, you got 2 casts on your legs, and you're having a party. Do you think what's going on there? You see, visualize that. Visualize those individuals dancing in that party on a flat earth, on a new age earth. Imagine that. Now remember that chemotherapy is still killing them. The cancer has in the 90th percentile of just rebooting itself, and you still haven't healed your legs. In fact, the chemotherapy is halting that healing process. And you have a lack of range of motion because of the cast and so on and so on. I mean, you can go so deep into that metaphor. But you get the point here. We're talking about evil. We're talking about the destruction. And this work is not done yet. In fact, it hasn't even really started. You're still in the introduction phase. We haven't really seen how bad it can really get. I mean, you have the introduction with people in Puerto Rico right now who are without power, and you see their response. Donald Trump going down there, dedicating, a golf trophy to the hurricane victims, and tossing paper towels into the crowd of people who have their entire lives flooded out and are without power for months. This is the mentality of this system. This is the system itself. Their entire worlds have been destroyed. And this guy's throwing paper towels at them like, it's ridiculous. So to close this all out, like I said, evil is not concerned with wishful thinkers. It doesn't care about your wishful thoughts and your happy thoughts and all that other shit. It laughs at you, and it employs people like that. It instigates that. That's where I'm saying this channeler energy is. When I reference channelers in previous videos, that's why I really think channeling, the intent of channeling is. Because I've already seen what they talk about and what they don't talk about. What they're telling you to not look at, as if it doesn't exist. It maintains that mentality of, oh, well, those are just those people on their journey. It's just their reality. It's their life. I mean, they've chosen that life. So, that's it. It's like enlightened nihilism. Awakened nihilism. That's exactly what evil thrives on. Because it sets the tone. It not only creates inaction, but it sets the tone for destructive action to be carried out even further. That's the expansion of the complacency of neutrality. That's what's going on here. The same thing goes for people believing in the American dream and defending the American dream. So what it all boils down to really is these illusions. So the illusion of heliocentrism, the illusions that you build upon yourself that not only destroy yourself, but they destroy your relationships with your loved ones, your brothers, your sisters, your parents, your kids. All of these are about, this is why, you have the single mother program. It's like, focus on sex, amplify sex in society, and then remove the father figure, the balance in that relationship. And then now you have a broken society, you have a broken system. And there was an email I got the other day talking about mentioning and I wanted to reference this in this video because this brings in the religious aspect and the religious, the dogmatic mind control program, because equally it's there when you have the cultural or the racial interactive mind control programs. It's like day to day in your body. Then you have the spiritual, which is your religious connections, the middleman that's there to separate you. Then you have heliocentrism, which takes away your higher mind, your observations of this universe, and your meaning and your purpose. So those are like the three heavy hitters. And I'm glad I remembered this right before I close this video out, because I wanted to mention this email that I got where an individual was talking about reproduction, and I mentioned marriage and reproduction being a mechanism used, and also Planned Parenthood, the destruction, all of these mechanisms that were being used. But I wanted to mention this one quote that this individual mentioned in response to what I was saying, however kind of way, but I just wanted to share where I was coming from when I read that quote. So this quote of "be fruitful and multiply," this idea goes on. It's a theme that goes on subconsciously and consciously with people who are into that space. Be fruitful and multiply as a mechanism or it's used as kind of like a defense. We're like reproducing warriors, and it's like just continue to constantly reproduce. This is why there's a depopulation program. There's actually the Planned Parenthood and all that other stuff, because they're trying to stop your population growth. The same thing goes for, they tell you that there's a population problem so that you don't reproduce and so on and so forth in order to maintain power and so forth. So that means that you have to be fruitful and reproduce and so on and so forth to combat there, so on and all that other stuff. What immediately came to mind was, like I've mentioned in previous videos, we're talking about spiritual quantity and spiritual quality. Knowing that this is a spiritual war, we are at this is spiritual warfare right now. I mean, there's intellectual warfare and physical warfare, but they are all a reflection of spiritual warfare. If you are bringing innocent souls into this experience on a quantity perspective and not focusing on the inner work that needs to be done, the destruction of these illusions that need to be done to affect the quality of these souls, both on the non-physical and the physical, then eventually that quantity defense mechanism will run out. Because once you continue to build up a quantity of people who don't have quality, you will eventually start to fight yourself, because you've built up a war, a quantitative war of lack of quality individuals that will now fight you, that will now be the warriors against you. And that's what I'm seeing is exactly what's going on right now with the whole pop culture, the mainstream media, the defending of heliocentrism and technology, the defending of transhumanism. You have millions and millions of people out there who can't think. They don't think for themselves. You might have multiplied and have been fruitful in your experience, but you've generated warriors, empty warriors for the other side, because they've just been mind controlled and manipulated into this illusory universe. And that's why the social media world, the internet and mainstream media, Hollywood. That's why those systems have to exist, because they know people are going to have sex. They're going to have babies. They're going to be fruitful. And the only way that they can maintain power and control over the people's natural responses in this reality, is to affect them on a massive scale. So while we are playing physical warfare with being fruitful and so on and so forth, they are playing psychological and spiritual warfare by affecting our quality of being. And those intellectual or psychological and spiritual warfare actions are so much more potent than your checker game of, I'm not going to have 2 babies. I'm going to have 10 babies, 10 little warriors. Well, those 10 little warriors are going to be maxing out. I mean, you're going to have 1 anomaly, 2 anomalies here and there, but largely they're going to max out at your experience. It's hard enough to build out or to maintain some kind of equilibrium for yourself. It's hard enough to find one's self and then grow from there. It's the exception to the rule to actually go further than what previous generations have done. Because that's the mechanism, that's the status quo of this mind control program, is to maintain fighting amongst the families. There's no growth. There is no building upon the previous generation. You just have the generations fighting themselves because they don't know themselves. They don't know their responsibility. They have no responsibility to their previous generations or their future generations. They exist in a world that is in response or reaction to. So you have these worlds that are designed to fight themselves and continue fighting themselves into the next generations. And they're built up of many different illusions from many different perspectives, on a very general perspective, that are affecting your mind, your soul, your mind, and your body. So I've mentioned the religious programs, the university programs, and the food and the water and security, human resources programs. Those are basically your soul, your mind, and your body. Religion, the university system, and the genetically modified world, pretty much. The destruction of nature, the destruction of your body on every level. So all of these systems are maintained. See, talking about flat Earth is just talking about, really, all of that energy is just localized to the intellectual warfare, the psychological warfare, the university system. Yes, you can take it into the spiritual warfare of meaning and purpose and connecting to the soul. But that, like I said, that's just the doorway. The mainstream reality of the flat Earth community right now is just focus on the science, flat versus globe. And these are these steps that people are taking. And largely that's what happens with people. You can see it as a larger program. A lot of people can't even entertain a so-called conspiracy as large as the flat Earth or heliocentrism if they've constantly limited them. They can't even entertain the idea of, like chemtrails or genetically modified food and water and the intent of all this stuff. They can't entertain being lied to in the public education system. So they say, how they just get into their emotions really quick. Why would they lie? Is everybody lying? Like, that's people's ways of feeling comfortable. Largely, they have to work their way through it in their own way. So you can't really entertain the information of flat Earth until you've first set up the platform or the foundation of entertaining that you could very much so be lied to about everything. Your food, your water, your shelter, your government, everything is a big lie. It's not to say that everybody is in on it, because the majority of people who are in those systems are being lied to themselves. They're lying to themselves and don't even know it. So that's a whole response to the people who are like, is everybody lying? It's like, no. It's the same thing that goes with like the pyramid and the government. It's like, well, is everybody in the government lying? Well, what about different space agencies? Space agencies in Russia are different from space agencies like NASA and China and Japan. They're different. What about SpaceX? Like, what do you say? Are they all lying? It's like, you're looking at this like this is a cartoon. Like this is a movie. Like you're Scooby-Doo and the bunch trying to find, the bad guys who are wearing these masks. And I mean, this is not a cartoon. This is a very complex system that is very compartmentalized and goes back so many generations. But when you really boil it down, when you really go into it, you're talking about evil. You're talking about mind control, literally, on many ways. And you trace it all the way back up, just as you can trace all of these corporations back to like a few corporations, all these news channels to one or two owners. When you know that, then that's where the information's coming from. That's where the intent's coming from. The money has the power in this illusory world. So the illusions of that money gives that money the power. So illusions actually run this world. And the people who are at the tippy top of these pyramids, they're the ones who are putting these systems out there. And it's the money making is done with chaos. So as long as you are continually fighting yourself and locked into chaos, you're not going to really do anything. You're not going to be any kind of threat. If you're making yourself comfortable in this system by new aging the shit out of your perspectives and flat earthing the shit out of your reality, then you're no threat to this system. You're just another talking bobblehead that's not going to do anything for the system itself. You're just going to act and react and respond to the system as it makes its move for you. You're just going to be another little pawn in the game, playing your moves. At best, a pawn on the chessboard if you're talking about fringe information like flat earth, but you're still limited to the same moves as a checker game. You're just a pawn. You're never going to be able to get into a position to checkmate this system. That's not to say a pawn can't checkmate the system. That's to say that this system cannot be checkmated in the first place. It's not designed. They break the rules of their game. If you think information is just going to win the game, no. They don't play by the rules. They've proven that. There are no rules when they are taking out actual people. They've already made the decision to be inhumane, and you're putting human laws on inhumane entities. You're putting natural laws on unnatural entities. And they like that shit. They laugh at you. They as in the essence of evil. Not to personify evil as Satan or the devil and all this other shit that people need to grasp onto. To leave it as the action of evil. The action of evil that exists. Now what is your responsibility? What are your actions? Are you going to be neutral? What is your responsibility in that position? And that's what I'm saying is such a threat with this whole love and light perspective from the New Age orchestra, and the same thing is going with like this New Age flat earth perspective sort of thing. It's just like, it's just flat and that's that, and that's going to heal the world. No. If you don't expand the storyline, and it is kind of weird that like I have to constantly go into this perspective. Like me mentioning this information is kind of and it's not for everybody, because I know a lot of people know where I'm coming from. But for me to have to address this issue as if it's not, as if it's a non-issue, because it is for a lot of people, it's kind of weird. It really is kind of weird, because I know these people know about this information. They know about what needs to be done. But it really is a hell of a thing to break these linear tactics, checker games. And this ain't checkers. And even if it is chess, they own the board. So what are you going to do knowing that? You know it's not checkers. You know it is chess. And you know they own the board. So what are you going to do with the chess pieces, with the checker game, and with the board itself? That's really boils down to. And all of these mechanisms are involved. Mainstream religions, heliocentrism, genetically modified foods, racism, race war, these politics, all of it has an intent there. So once you destroy the illusions of the self, in order to truly be one, like all these new age people just commercialize and put out there, you can't be one unless you've destroyed the illusions of the self, first of all, which opens you up to be one with nature, to be one with your brother and your sister on your left and your right, in the fight against this evil sort of this evil reality, really. If the neutrality is evil, then the reality itself is evil. Neutrality is the baseline. It's the centerpiece. It's what locks this whole thing together. So this is what the fight is, or people who are just being complacent. You're taking the side of the oppressor. And the oppressor has created an entire universe. But if you yourself are built up of destructive illusions, then you're actually going to be comfortable in a destructive universe. If you yourself, I say it again, if you yourself are built up of destructive illusions, then you will be comfortable in a destructive universe. You will accept that reality. That's exactly what's going on within every individual and society as a whole. Which is why this destroyer energy, and people mention all this stuff like Kali and all this other stuff and how it's been personified. I learn from this information. I can see it. I see what its intent is. But I myself don't go into personifying it, naming it, and so on and so forth. I see where it can be utilized in the system for the greater good of my perspective. That's the best I could do, is to challenge myself to go to act in reference to the greater good, whatever my perspective of that is. And it's not about just loving and lighting the shit out of your reality. It's about also understanding that you can't actually have any kind of balanced spaces if you are weighed down by the densities of destructive illusions. So these destructive illusions, they themselves need to be destroyed in order to have a balance in nature, in order to have a system. This is this growth. So the New Age commercializes this reality and says, oh, well, you just need to think. You just need to say, oh, well, you're one. It's all about love and light. Then you have these floaty ass people walking around, like feeling the energy as they walk through the restaurant. Oh, let's sit over. I feel we should. They're just playing a movie, largely. I mean, it's not for them. Largely, completely. A lot of it's a show. It's like, look how fucking enlightened I am. Look how awakened I can literally feel with my hands. I am feeling the energy of this room as I walk through, and I'm such an empath. I can't take your energy right now. It's just like it's soaking my life away, and I need to clear my chakras. I need to meditate. I need to be in a higher vibration space. And okay, good luck with that. They're just gonna stomp right on your shit, and then you're just gonna keep playing the game over again. Oh, just like, this is my experience. As you sit in a cell somewhere, because your brothers and sisters are, mind you, your brothers and sisters, it might not be in your New Age community, but your brothers and sisters are sitting in that cell right now. And or think of them in Syria and Libya and everywhere else that has been hit by this destroyer energy. You've gone from one extreme to the other to cope. The New Age love and light mechanism is a coping mechanism. It's a prescription drug. In the highest of the highest control grids, it's actually employed by the evil itself. That's why I said this channeling shit, this channeling information that just tells you just to love and light everything, it's very suspect. You better look at it. Again, I don't give a shit if they're giving you 99% of all love and light energy in the universe. That last 1%, if it's pure evil, you better believe, or even if it has a little smidge of evil that gets spread out over time. Like I said, this energy doesn't care about time. It exists outside of time. It's got all the time in the world. They can sell you 99% of love and light in time, as long as that 1% of destructive evil is allowed to stay in place and maintain its position in this reality. I'll say that again, because that's pretty much the essence of this entire New Age program. They can sell you 99% of love and light for the rest of your time, throughout time, because they exist outside of time. As long as you accept that 1 or 0.001% of pure evil or spread out evil over time to exist. Because that's the intent. That's what really matters. To them, it doesn't matter to you when you're in the New Age bubble, when you're in the love and light bubble, because your life is what you make it. Your life is what you perceive. It's all energy. It's all about harnessing the light. And repulse the monkey. Repulse the evil energy. Yeah, it's just prescription drug for that last 1%. 99%, you're good to go. That's an illusion. It's a video game. All of these are designed to maintain that sort of mechanism. And however way is comfortable for you. Some people jump out of religion, jump into the New Age. Some people jump out of the New Age straight back into religion. You know, they're looking for comfortable zones. Nobody's comfortable naked anymore. Who are you nakedly? Intellectually naked. Spiritually naked. The same reflection is physically naked. The same uncomfort that we have, or discomfort that we have from being physically naked, it's the same discomfort we have from being intellectually naked and spiritually naked. Some people gotta wear clothes. They gotta have something. That's the whole illusion. And as long as we continue to wear these clothes of this illusory system, we'll never be able to explore our higher potentials, let alone our maximum potentials in this experience, but at least start getting into our higher potentials. You're wearing somebody else's clothes. I mean, literally, look at what Christopher Columbus set up the tone for. You know, wear this funny looking hat and these buttons and these clothes and have this sword and these boots. You're just a primitive and savage. Look how you're living in a teepee with this nonsense. It's not to say that the Native Americans or the indigenous people were perfect. This is to say that there's a very different relationship that they had with nature than what we have today. Nature as a whole. There were benefits and there were downfalls, obviously. But the benefits are being completely distracted from, demonized, in fact, and brushed under the rug. And if you consume your reality with prescription drugs, if you continue to just act like, you know, loving and lighting or flat earthing the shit out of your reality is the only thing that you need to be doing, and everybody else who just doesn't come to this, you know, awakened space that you are in from realizing that the earth is not a globe, or realizing that the earth it's not even physical. We're just energy. And that's it. It's that simple. I did it. I did it. I did it. The earth is flat. I did it. The earth is energy. What's the difference? What did you do? In this life or the next, the work that you are avoiding, whether knowingly or unknowingly, will have to be done. You will have to come back and ground yourself in the space, in this life or the next, and do this work. Yes, you have the choice to say that you have done the work. You can say that you have done the work of being one with everybody, of fighting for good versus evil. You can say that you've done the work. You can say it so much that you've convinced yourself every day of your life until you die. You can say that. But if you've also consumed your life with prescription drugs that make your words of you saying that your reality instead of your actions saying that, then that work will never be done. And you will have to do that work in this life, whether it's 10, 20 years from now or the next life. The energy will not go away. You cannot fake experience. You cannot fake yourself. You can't fake yourself out. It can only last for so long. This is what's going on with heliocentrism. They've faked a lot of people out. And then people fake themselves out, and then they fake their children out. And then they defend. That's how it stays alive. Keep faking, juking yourself. Keep faking yourself out. Eventually, you're going to have to do something with that. If you don't get it this time, you'll get it next time, or the next time, or the next time, or the next time. Self-solace without collective progress is another illusion. If you've just found solace in your prescription drug reality, if you've just meditated your life away, like Alan Watts said, meditation, like any other practice, is not a diet. It's a medicine. Meditation is a medicine. It's a way to get to a certain space. But once you get to that certain space, you become the space. That's the definition of the difference between a diet and a medicine. See, we are locked into this addictive mentality of needing medicines, but we don't realize our physical and non-physical diets. So we just accept whatever reality is a side effect to the medication that we take. We defend our pill boxes filled with side effects. Every day you're taking 40, however many pills a day, creating who it is that you think you are. I mean, obviously everybody thinks that they're somebody, but a better or a more colorful version of that is like an office manager, a department head or a store manager at Office Depot, who, like the guy at on Office Space, the movie The Office Space, or a better one is a guy who really thinks that he's like king shit because he's the manager of Office Depot or something like that. Like, is that who that person is as a human? Is their humanity based upon Office Depot? No. To them it is. Their life, it is. It is. You know these people. That's what I'm saying, the difference between, like thinking you're somebody or thinking you're something. And that's just another example of how we can lock ourselves into these illusions. Thinking that, oh, I got it. I know it all. This is it. And just stopping there. When the entire experience is based upon constant expansion. Expansion by letting go. Letting go of the density. And you find comfort at each level. That's why I said, if you find solace in the self, you reach that point in the self. Wonderful. That's great. Is that the end of your work? Does it stop there? You say that you're one with the self, which makes you one with nature and one with everything else. Is that it? How is that in relation to your relationship with the people around you? Does it matter? Do they matter? To some people, no. That's the theme in the New Age community. They just say, oh yeah, no, that's their journey, that's their karma. Even having the information, having the means, having the energy, having the potential to address these injustices, these human, spiritual, and physical injustices, having the means to address and expose and acknowledge those systems. Oh, no, I'm neutral. It's not my world. Okay. But like I said, in this life or the next, you will have to face that. Because those people are who you are. The people who are being bombed as a result of your creature comforts right now, that's you. That's who you are. If you're comfortable now and you just maintain that comfort, you better live it up. Because it's only going to get harder to recognize those illusions if you keep looking the other way. Just like it's harder for older people to let go of a lot of things. You think that's not a reflection of what happens in the non-physical reality? Look how hard it is for old schools to let go of to let go of the university system. To let go of the Western society, the Western so-called civilization. To let go of the church. That's a good one. All these old Jesus, Jesus did this, praise the Lord. Just, it's the old schools that can't let it go because that's who they are. That's who they've built themselves up to be. That's their positive. That's their good in response to the evil that has presented itself to them in their world. That's their warrior. That's their savior. They are a manifestation, an embodiment of that. The older that they get, then the more that they consume or allow their experience to be a reflection of those truths, those beliefs, those dogmatic programs that become reality over time. The system knows this. That's the world that's being played. That's why I said they don't care about time, the so-called they, whatever they is. It's you. It's based upon what you do and what you don't do. You are affecting that so-called timeline by your action and inaction. So when people take offense to me mentioning something like white supremacy and racism and so on and so forth, knowing that it's still being used as a weapon against humanity today, that is inaction in action. Inaction in action. That's exactly what's going on today. And on that note, I think I'll close this video out because that's pretty much the essence of where I'm coming from. If we don't address this in action, as if it is the only action, then we're just going to be fluffing our feathers. So, thank you for joining me. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the comments and the shares and the likes. I appreciate that. If I don't respond in emails, I'll try to respond. I usually like to respond in videos. So because I like to let it kind of, the information settle where it is, and I don't know, typing and all that other stuff it's kind of, I do read the information though. I try to respond when I can, but I would like to respond in video format more often than not. So yeah, that's pretty much what I had for this video. I know what my intent is. I know where my heart is. I know what I've experienced and what my so-called mission is, what I am doing. Is largely because it's part of like what I can't not do what I'm doing. This information is, when I share this information, it's not, it might seem like it has an expectation on people, but it's not. It's not based upon any kind of expectation. My passion is from not only from who I am as an individual, but who I feel I am as a human being in this experience, and recognizing the evil that exists and the good that exists. Look at the heart of a child. Look at the actions of a child. Look at your ancestors. Not to say that they were perfect, but look at the good. Because we're told to focus on the bad. This is what that whole savage and primitive mentality is based upon. And then taking a step even further, to hate yourself with racism. These were inventions that still have an effect today, that are still being amplified today. That fire is still being stoked today. You call yourself a truther? You call yourself a warrior for whatever it is that you want to be a warrior for. But you can't talk about this alchemy that's being used against the entire, not just humanity, nature itself. Good luck with that. See how long that lasts. Like I said, in this life or the next, you're going to have to process that information. Nobody else. You. You still feel uncomfortable about referencing white supremacy, white privilege, racism as a whole, knowing that it's an alchemy. You have to address that information. Today or tomorrow or the next life. Not anybody else. You can get all pissy in the comment section of YouTube world because somebody else references that information as something that needs to be acknowledged, healed. And just, hoping and wishing and, humaning the shit out of it is not going to make it go away. It's not that simple. It's a very complex system, like a parasite or a virus. It's not just a thing that's out there that you can just control, alt, delete. You can't just reboot the system and no. It's throughout the people themselves who are utilizing that computer. So this is not for me, the work that I'm doing. Your voice is a weapon. Just like the mainstream media. That's why they want you to make it think like money is a weapon and money is a voice, through money being a voice. Like, no, your voice from your people, from you, from your perspective, all of those perspectives. That's the most powerful weapon that you have, because you affect not only the physical, but the intellectual, the psychological, and the spiritual warfare through your words, through your perspectives, and how you perceive your reality. What you've learned, what you've experienced, what no longer affects you anymore, and how other people can break those codes. That's the most powerful thing that you can do. That's what makes you an actual warrior in this experience. Not a warrior that's limited to war itself, but in the essence of what a real warrior actually is. Like the balances between the divine feminine and the divine masculine. The meaning and the purpose of the masculine traits. The meaning and the purpose of the feminine traits. They all have creative and destructive. They both have creative and destructive potentialities, traits, and ways to affect this reality. If you just utilize only one version of that, then you're going to be out of balance, and you're going to be hopping your way like Lisa Turtle, just hopping, doing the hop, hopping your way on one broken leg, dancing, thinking you're dancing. All right, yeah, that's cool. You can do the hop. That's a dance. Cool. But until you heal that other leg, you're going to just be playing another. You're just going to be hopping your ass or broken leg ass around. This is not for me. This is not for the individual that I am. At the very least, this is for the future generations and the ancestors. As simple as I can make it, the work that I am doing right now, this is why flat and globe shit really doesn't matter. It's just a mechanism. It's used. I'm using it as a tool to help people realize the work that needs to be done for future generations and in respect and honor of our ancestors. And today. And today really comes last, in third place out of all that other stuff, because The body is just a reflection. It's already, you're going to die at some time. And if you're living in an illusion, you're not really alive. So if you're living in that illusion, it's because you have some kind of fear maintaining that illusion. So you're actually a zombie. That's the definition of a zombie, living dead. So when you realize that, then you start to activate your responsibility to your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and all the future generations that have yet to experience, yet have to even been born yet, to experience this bullshit. These lies and illusions that are being passed down by the people who are manipulating the world that we are experiencing now in time, in the physical reality. This is just one version of the reality. It might seem, the work that I'm talking about, the information that I'm talking about, it might seem aggressive or off base or distracting from whatever because of whatever. That's your perspective. I'm jumping back and forth between honoring the ancestors, maintaining a somewhat of an understanding of what's going on in the day-to-day alchemy that's going on, and utilizing all of that information to help affect in a positive light the realities of our future generations. The ones who haven't even been born yet. Because whose responsibility is that? Is it your ancestors? No, they're not here right now. They're here in spirit, but you're in body. You have a more responsibility in body than your ancestors do right now. You're up to bat. You're in the batter's box right now. If you wake up every morning in this body, you're in the batter's box. Not your kids and the future generations who aren't born yet. Not your ancestors who have already been through this experience. You. And like I said, you are the one that's responsible for this work. And if you don't do it when you're in the batter's box right now, you will have to do it when you are in the batter's box next time. In this life or the next, you will have to face this information. You can't just get all pissy. The same way people get pissy about when I mention racism, white supremacy, and all this other stuff is the same kind of way. It's the same kind of energy that people have when they get all pissy about people who talk about flat earth. When they come in with that globe, oh, come on. You really believe in the flat earth? Come on. Are you serious right? You're being serious right now? Like, look at all that energy and emotion that's in that shit. It's the same kind of thing. Oh, come on. You white privilege? Really? Seriously? White supremacy? Seriously? Race? Seriously? Racism? Come on. Oh, come on now. That's not, they're trying to convince you that something's wrong with you so they don't realize that they have work to do. And they have to build it in all this emotion and all this external bullshit to look the other way. It's the same mechanism. In this life or the next, you're going to have to deal with that shit. You're going to have to do something with it. You're going to have to clear that energy. And throwing a big ass fucking dramatic party about how wonderful you are is not going to do it. I don't care how many degrees you have. I don't care how many places you've been. Or how many things you've claimed to research. Or how many perspectives you come from. If you are still holding on to those destructive mechanisms, you are your worst enemy. And you're the only one that could face that enemy. So, officially closing this video out. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.